with the preamble to the Decalogue, the Aseret HaDivrot, in chapter 19 of Exodus, verse 10, where it says, Hashem said to Moshe, God said to Moshe, go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day. For the third day, Hashem will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai, and you shall set bounds to the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves, that you go not up into the mountain, or touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be surely put to death. No hand shall touch it, but surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man shall not live. Only when the shofar, its horn, sounds long, then they can go up to the mountain. This is what we term until today Shloshet Yemei HaBala, 3 days of separation. In other words, the people are about to hear the voice of God speaking to them, to reach a level of prophecy. So to do that, they had to separate themselves from any connection between the men and the women, and they had to be sure that they would become purified. They would, it's hinted, they would have immersion. You can see that they have new garments, fresh garments. And then it says they were to regard the mountain of Sinai, on which Hashem appeared to them, as being like the holy place for the time of what we call Ma'amad Hazina, for the time of preparation to reach a level of prophecy. So you have to understand what lies behind this, and it's put in such severe terms that if anybody goes on the mountain, unless Hashem gave permission, like he said to Moshe to come up the mountain, but they were not permitted under any circumstance, not even the animals. So what lies behind all this? So first I'm going to give you the most significant interpretation of all this from the commentary of Rav Hirsch, which is valid, especially for our times. What lies behind this? And afterwards, when it was over, the special sound of the shofar, it was over, they could go on the mountain. And we also know that after the revelation of the Aseret HaDivrot, of the Decalogue, the holiness left the mountain. It's got no more holiness. So, this is the concept. This it was done to establish historically for future generations that God, as it were, remained in his place opposite the people, that his word came to the people. God was not inside them or in their midst, and his voice did not emerge from within the people. It's our general approach to prophecy and to divine inspiration is that it's given to the person, and more ordinary types of prophecy, and then the person receives the message and passes it on to the people. And in the world at large, amongst the Gentiles, They speak about it being perhaps divine inspiration. But the giving of the Decalogue wanted to establish that we should not think that the Jewish people were on the level to be able to have, as it were, inspired aspects inside themselves, and from that they brought out, from the intelligence of the Jewish people, came out Jewish concepts of morality and law and order. So it is not so. I'm quoting more directly. Jewish law is the only system of laws that did not emanate from religion, that did not spring from the hearts of the people who find it a spiritual basis for their lives. It is this objective quality of Jewish law and of the Jewish religion that makes them both unique, setting them apart clearly and distinctly from all else on earth that goes by the name of law or religion. This quality makes Jewish law the sole factor in human culture that could be considered a catalyst and ultimate goal of every other manifestation of progress. And the law itself, as the given absolute ideal, remains above and beyond any idea of progress. All other religions, codes of law, originate in the human mind of a given era. They merely express the conceptions of God, of human destiny, and a man's relationship to God and to his fellow man that are held by a given society in a particular period of history. And in fact, if you look in general encyclopedias about Judaism, Judaism is a religion like other religions and develops from the hearts and minds and expressions of great individuals. No, it's not so. All other religions, codes of law, is human mind given era. But all these man-made religions and codes, like all other aspects of human civilization, science, art, morals and manners, are subject to change with the passing of time. For their very nature and origin, they are nothing but the expression of levels reached by civilization with various stages in human development. This, I would say, is also the widely held view of many rabbis and spiritual leaders of Reconstructionism and Reform Judaism. But this parsha teaches us the opposite. Not so. I mean, can anybody imagine that from the corruption and from the idolatry, which we know from many historical records, covered most of the human population, that the Jewish people, from their own selves, were able to express this in one way or another? Even the highest spiritual leaders, they would go and put forward such a clear code of importance as expressed in the Decalogue. Not so the Jewish religion, Jewish law. They do not stem from beliefs held by human beings at one period or another. They do not contain time-bound human concepts of God and things human and divine. They are God-given. Through them, men are told by God's will what their conception should be for all time, about God and things divine, and above all, about man and human affairs. So, you could say that Rav Hirsch expresses frequently in his writings that, however up to date you go in the development of even fulfillment of the Torah, you can never reach the highest level as expressed in the Torah. It's a higher level, and therefore it tells us, strive to reach a higher level. You've got to change your life in accordance with the directives given from God, who is above the world, above every aspect of the physical and even the spiritual world of the human being. So from the very outset, he said, the purpose of these preparations here are to emphasize that Torah did not arise from within the people. It was given to the people. And only after centuries of struggle did the Torah win the people's heart. so they became its bearers through the ages. And the purpose of all these preparations is to emphasize and mark this contrast as clearly as possible, as the Torah's first entrance into the world, which was especially placed in Sinai to be open to every man's land, because it was no man's land. And mark this contrast as clearly possible as the Torah's first entrance, a contrast that so fundamentally characterizes the Torah's nature and origin. The Torah is about to come to the people. Its arrival is anticipated over a period of 3 days. In order to be worthy of even awaiting the Torah, the people must first sanctify their bodies and their garments. They must become worthy of receiving the Torah by becoming aware of the rebirth, the renewal of their lives, within and without. The Torah is to bring about. In their present state, they're not yet ready to receive the Torah. And this is underscored also in terms of physical separation. The place from which the people are to receive the Torah is very clearly set apart from them. It's elevated into the realm of that which is extraterrestrial. No man or animal may set foot upon that place, even touch it. Any living thing that sets foot upon it must be put to death. Only when the law-giving has been completed will the place be restored to the terrestrial sphere, and both man and beast will be free once more to walk upon it. Until that time, the people will be restricted by a boundary all around, beyond which they must go. That illustrates the Torah's superhuman, extraterrestrial origin. So I want to add something to this, that many people ask the question. The time when God revealed himself to millions of people with the purpose that this should influence all mankind, it was on this mountain, and Mount of Sinai. And the first hint of that mountain was the first revelation given to Moses, to Moshe, the beginning of Exodus. And it's clearly connected with V'ineh hasneh bo'er ba'esh, hasneh en v'kal, because the burning bush, which should not become consumed. Which we can now interpret, this was the preparation where Hashem revealed himself and also his deeper essence, his name, to Moses, Moshe, and he got Moshe to agree to be his representative and bring this Torah to the world. And if we can even say that the concept of the fire of this bush, which did not consume the bush, represents the eternal message. Because it says, Hashem's voice came milabat eish, from the center, from the heart of the fire. That this is the fire of Hashem, the fire of God, that will produce the greatest light and the greatest warmth for all mankind. And as I mentioned before, there's a fossil in the mountain which is generally regarded as Mount Sinai until today. The whole mountain is filled with a fossil of a little bush. That's the mountain. So why is it holy? And in fact, when here in the yeshiva, a lady came from a conservative Jewish background, a very generous lady, and she was keen to spread the Ten Commandments all over the world. And she had the luchot with the first words of the Decalogue, 10 sayings. She had it put up here in Israel, many crossroads. She also came to her yeshiva and had it put up at her yeshiva. And then she asked, would someone please put these up on Mount Sinai? So my son, Rav Rom, who was like a a person, as he is still today, who loves exploration. So he went and made a big sign with the Ten Commandments. He put them up on the Mount of Sinai. And we know that there was a time, I think Sadat was keen to establish on Mount Sinai a chapel. There was already a Christian chapel there of some sort. So he wanted it to include also a mosque and a synagogue. That was the plan at the time. I don't think anything came of it. But in any case, for us, even some opinions, it never became Sinai, it never became part of the land of Israel. Perhaps in the future it might become, but it doesn't have the holiness of the land of Israel. Why not? Surely it's the most holy place of all. So I want to express the idea which is brought in many verses in the Bible, and especially the Ramban, he traces all the way through. What happened? At Sinai, Hashem spoke to the people of Israel. But after this great event, the holiness of the mountain disappeared, and then God asked the people, after a time, they should build a sanctuary. Really, the whole purpose of this vision and the level of prophecy was to get the people to change. And even it says straight after, wherever you call upon my name, I'll come and bless you, to emphasize that if the people will be on a high enough level to keep up this covenant at its highest level, then perhaps there'd be no need for a special building in some place. But he saw the people not on that level, and therefore they have to have somehow that the message of the spiritual planet and world which exists at the root of the physical world has to have some representation on this earth. And therefore, originally it says the Shekhinah can rest wherever Am Yisrael reaches the highest level. But then it says, I can see it's better you have a place. So what they had to build a Mishkan, a sanctuary, and God then went and spoke to the people, and to Moshe, by Moshe spoke to the people from the center of the sanctuary. And that's the fire on the top of the mountain was transferred to the cherubs, which glittered with gold, and the fire represents the warmth and the light that spreads out to the world. It was transformed to the Holy Ark. On top of the Holy Ark, the cherubs, and from between the cherubs, as God gave over His word to Moshe, gave it over to the people. And that continued until this mobile sanctuary reached Eretz Israel, and then it came to rest in certain temporary places. Went to Gilgal, to Shiloh, to different places, until ultimately it came to Yerushalayim. And there it was to be forever. Although that would be the central place for the people of Israel, from which it should spread out to the whole world. And the mountain of Sinai was transferred to the mountain, the Temple Mount. And the Temple Mount, we have similar situations. The person is impure, is not allowed to go on the Temple Mount. In fact, it can be very serious. And that's where the relevance of the mountain of Har Sinai, and how when the Torah was given there, it was forbidden for anybody to go there, that concept was transferred to the holiness of the Temple Mount. And because of its holiness, we, whatever situation is, we are not allowed to go on that mountain except to save lives. Otherwise, it's forbidden. And that's so important for today. Why? Because when there was a big movement, 150 years ago, of the leaders of the return of the Jewish people to our own land, and there was the question, the mosque is on the Temple Mount, it was understood by the friendly Muslims at that time that the people of Israel, they don't really have permission to go on the Temple Mount. if they find some way of mission. At that time there was a time when the Islam leaders were quite friendly to the Jews. They said, okay, we will fit in to permit in a certain place, because you have to. They knew there were Jewish restrictions, but a certain place in which you might be able to bring the Pesach offering. Even that was suggested, but suggested on the understanding that it was with agreement with the Muslims. And so today, people who go think they're fulfilling a mitzvah, going up on the Temple Mount. What's happening? They're causing, unfortunately, terrible provocations, and religiously it's not permissible. All the chief rabbis, Rav Kook, who was really the leading, called generally regarded as Zionist rabbi, he was very much opposed to anybody going on the Temple Mount if it was not 100% purified, which has certain restrictions, and also only if it was necessary to save lives, otherwise it was forbidden. And this applied to all the basic halachic authorities until today, and especially if it can act as provocation. And we know, unfortunately, this has been disregarded. Therefore, this concept here, when the Torah was given, we see how strict it was. I think there's a veiled reference here as a premonition, because it speaks about the future, that we're not dealing only with on Mount Sinai when the Torah was given, we're dealing with a Temple Mount where the holiness of the Shekhinah came to rest for all times. That's an important lesson. If you have any questions on this before we continue? So we'll read on a bit. That it says in verse 15, came to pass on the third day in the morning that there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud upon the mountain, and the sound of a shofar exceeding loud. So all the people in the camp trembled. It wasn't. And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Vayityatzvu v'tachtit ha'ar really means under the mountain. So on this the sages say, well, let's first see, it says, the mountain of Sinai, it says in verse 18, it smoked in every part, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Vatal ashono ke'eshna kivshan, and its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it says that the mountain trembled. So I want to give the following partial explanation. Why did it have to say that the smoke was like the smoke of a furnace? What difference does it make? So to understand it on a deeper level, that the mountain of Sinai was a symbol of what might happen to the people of Israel. But the previous verse, it says, "Vayityatzvu b'tachtit ha'ar." The people were made to stand up underneath the mountain. So the sages say on this, to understand it more deeply, that kafa alehem ha'kagigis, Hashem, He bent over the mountain over the people. The mountain was trembling, so it's like as though the mountain was lifted up on top of the people, and they had the feeling that it's going to fall on top of them and destroy them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, so it's described in the Gemara, Kov Aleim Hagagigis. Hashem put the mountain over them like a barrel. He said to them, if you accept the Torah, well and good. And you don't accept the Torah, I'll bring the world back to chaos. And you'll be buried there. Shomti Kuratchem. You'll be buried there. So this is a very cryptic description of what lies behind it. So most of the commentators who go more deeply, like the Maral and Meshach Chochmah, they say like this. There are many questions on this whole dramatic episode. According to the way the Gemara describes it, they had no choice. They were told either you accept it or you will be exterminated. So, and also the world will go back to chaos. But before, the people were asked, do you want to accept the Torah? They were given the choice. If it was said we don't want to accept it, so Hashem would have said, okay, if you don't want to accept it, I'll find somebody else. But there's no threat involved at all. It's as though the people had to choose. He said, I want you to become a model people. If you accept the covenant, well and good. If you don't want to, then it says, Moshe was specially sent to the people to find out what is their response. And Vayalu kolam yakto vayomru, whatever Hashem says, we want to do. That means you've accepted it. So it's a covenant that remains forever with the people of Israel. But the people were given the choice, and then afterwards, a few verses later, they're given no choice. How do we understand this? So, this is already asked by all the authorities, by Rishonim, in the Midrash. Do you know and answer this question? It's a contradiction. Did Am Yisrael receive it freely, and which is celebrated, Nazav Nishma Ke'echad, freely they accepted, they could have rejected it, and then afterwards Hashem forced it on them. So how do you answer this question? You heard some answers? So you haven't?
I think I've heard it.
Yes?
I heard the solution before.
Yes?
Because I think they're willing to accept the 5 books of Moses, but the oral Torah was something else.
Yeah, that's the answer given, or in early Midrash, quoted by Tosfos, that to accept what's written, what's the diburim, what actually they have to do. Okay, we'll do it. But Torah Sheba'al Peh really should go deeply into it and try to understand it and fulfill it with all its details, which also means understanding it well. We can't undertake that, it's too difficult. So therefore, the Torah Sheba'al Peh was forced upon them. Torah Shebichtav, that means the written, whatever's written, that's much easier. In other words, let's put it this way, even until today, there are many Jews also, as well as Gentiles, that shall accept the principles of biblical Judaism I can accept. But rabbinic Judaism is too difficult. And that's gone right through the ages. So Hashem made his covenant, as it's described later in the Chumash also. He wanted the covenant also to be on the oral traditions. And that was for that he had to force them. The question is, if he forces them, does it have any value? So I think want to combine this answer with an answer within Jewish law. And here I'm following the Maral and Meshach Chochmah. Because we have the principle, what does kafiyah mean? We speak of religious coercion. That people feel they're being forced to do something. People don't want to be forced. People want to do things out of their free option. So we have within the legal system of the Torah, we have a person who has to bring sin offerings for different sins he's committed. There we say, we force him to agree to bring them until he says, I want to do it. This applies even today. Today it's used in Jewish law here in Israel in a very difficult manner, but nevertheless part of the Jewish law, that to give the bill of divorce a get, the person has to give it out of his own free will. If the husband, let's say a cruel husband, and the Beit Din decide that this husband can't go and abuse this wife further, and they say, you have to give her a get. And especially, there are abusive husbands, and a young wife, she's not really tied to him. Though, of course, the secular court, they'll immediately say, we'll cancel the marriage. But a Jewish court, it says the husband's got to give the get out of his own free will. So today, as things are at the moment, there are the agunot. It means women whose cruel husband, abusive husband is still living, and out of spite he won't give her a get. Then there's authority. It goes through the courts, but its origin comes to the rabbinic courts. So they take away his passport, and so on, that you can't just run away. Somebody's just run away to another country. And then for life, this woman can't remarry. So what do? They take away the passport, they don't leave the country. If necessary, they put him in prison. There are people, men until they agree. So they put him in prison, and the rabbis go to the prison and say, well, will you give a get now? Then he can be released. So he says, okay, but it's being released by force. I'll give a get. That get is called, he's giving it, I want to give it. So it's interpreted as free will. How can you explain that?
Oh.
You know the explanation?
Yeah.
The Rambam. The Rambam is a very big rationalist. So he says like this, that the true ego of the Jew, he wants to keep the Torah. So when he's reached a situation, tragic situation, that his wife, he can't live with her, doesn't want to live with her, and out of spite and anger he won't give her a get, you've got to bring him to a situation that his true self comes out. Because, why do you want to do it? Because he hates her up. Because of his evil spirit of spite. And sometimes the evil cruelty drives him. So we've got to try and persuade him, you're blinded. So he forces you in different ways till he says, I give in. Then your good self comes out. Because you have to give, the good self comes out. The good self is deep down in the Jew's heart. And therefore, it works. And that's what I want to say also here. Torah Sheba'al Peh, I'm combining the two answers. Torah Sheba'al Peh was too difficult for them. But, Jews are brought to a situation, Hashem brings the Jewish nation to a situation. You want to know the essence of the Jewish people. Because the written Bible has become widespread amongst all the nations of the world. They also, many of them, know the values that are written, that apply to all mankind in the written Torah. But you, as the Jewish people, you have to keep the Torah on a deeper level. And that's the root of the Jewish soul comes out when you bring them into Torah Sheba'al Peh. Not good enough to have institutions where they'll teach you the Bible and ignore the rabbis. No, you've got to go, and that what brings up the true Jewish soul. That's Kofelem Hagagigis. But I've just mentioned further something. Why does it say here the Eshen HaKivshon? That's a further dimension, just mentioned briefly. I think if you go back wherever this is mentioned, in the first vision given to Avraham Avinu, it mentions Tanur Ashan. It means the burning ovens. Those burning ovens speak about the crematoriums of the Nazis. And here as well, Sinai, the sages say, what are the source of the hatred of Esav and Ishmael? It's jealousy that leads to hatred, and their hatred becomes wild, and they want to burn up the Jews, as Haman wants to do. That's Milav Rabbi. Want to burn up every Jew. And there's the people of Israel, we have to keep the Torah at its highest level, with Torah Sheba'al Peh, keep the fire of Torah burning, because if we don't do it on the highest level, then the nations will come against us and they want to burn us up entirely. And that's Ke'esh Nakivshan. So we've got to bring ourselves to the highest level of saintliness to observe the Torah Shebechtav and the Torah Sheba'al Peh with all the Musa that's contained in the words of the sages, and that has to transform our lives, and thereby will even overcome the terrible threats and methods of annihilation of the Jewish people, which have their source ultimately in Sinai, which has created Sinai. We've got to transform it to become the opposite. From Sinai to come to the Beit HaMikdash, we become a magnet for high spirituality for all the nations of the world.